There is a battle happening inside you right now. Not the kind people can see. Not the kind you talk about. Not the kind you post online. A quieter battle. A darker one. A battle that decides the direction of your entire life, long before you take a single step. It's the battle between the voice that pushes you forward, and the voice that pulls you under. The battle between the part of you that believes, and the part of you that whispers, you can't. Most people lose this battle without ever realizing they were fighting one. Not because they're weak. Not because they're lazy. But because the enemy isn't outside. It's inside. And it knows your every fear. Your every doubt. Your every weakness. It knows exactly where to strike. This is the hidden battle in your mind, one you've been fighting your entire life, in silence. And for years, I lost it. It started slowly. Too slowly to notice. At first, it was just a whisper, barely audible, almost harmless. You're behind. Everyone else is moving faster. You're not doing enough. You're not enough. The voice didn't yell. It didn't attack. It didn't need to. It just lingered. Like a shadow that followed me everywhere, to work, to bed, into conversations, into decisions. It questioned everything I did. Everything I wanted. Everything I dreamed of. It told me I wasn't ready. It told me people would judge me. It told me success wasn't meant for me. It told me failure was guaranteed. And I believed it. Not all at once. Piece by piece. Doubt by doubt. Fear by fear. Until one day, I woke up and realized the voice had grown stronger than I was. It controlled my mornings. I'd wake up with a heaviness I couldn't explain, the weight of thoughts that weren't even mine, but felt truer than anything I could tell myself. It controlled my decisions. Every time I wanted to try something new, something inside would clamp down and whisper, "Don't embarrass yourself." It controlled my relationships. I stopped opening up. Stopped sharing ideas. Stopped reaching out. Stopped believing I had value. It controlled my nights. Every failure, real or imagined, replayed endlessly in my mind, amplified by a voice that seemed determined to break me. And the worst part? I thought it was normal. I thought everyone lived like this. I thought this voice was just me being realistic. I thought I was being practical, humble, careful. But I wasn't being careful. I was being controlled. By a voice that sounded like me, but wasn't me. By a voice whose only job was to keep me small. And for a long time, it succeeded. I didn't fight back. Not because I didn't want to, but because I didn't know I could. See, no one teaches you about the invisible war happening in your own mind. No one warns you that the greatest enemy you will ever face isn't fear, or failure, or rejection. It's the voice that lives inside your head and knows exactly how to weaponize them against you. The hidden battle. The silent war. The psychological conflict that slowly destroys your confidence, your dreams, your potential, until all that's left is a person who moves through life carefully, but never fully. And that's who I became. A careful version of myself. A muted version. A smaller version. A version shaped not by my choices, but by my inner critic. But life has a way of breaking the illusions you hide behind. And the breaking point came in the most unexpected moment, a moment that would finally reveal the truth about that voice, and the truth about myself. It happened late one night. The world outside was asleep. The room was silent. My phone screen glowed with the kind of emptiness you feel when you scroll without purpose. But inside my chest, inside my mind, something was shifting. I felt a tightness. A pressure. Like my thoughts were finally too loud to ignore. And then it happened. A single thought. A single sentence. A single whisper that sliced through everything. Who would you be without that voice? For a moment, I froze. Not because the question was profound, but because it felt impossible. Who would I be without the self-doubt? Without the fear? Without the constant inner resistance? I had no answer. Because I had never lived a day without that voice leading me. I didn't know who I was without my inner enemy. And that realization hit me with painful clarity. I wasn't losing the battle in my mind. I wasn't fighting it at all. I had surrendered. Years ago. Without noticing. The voice hadn't defeated me. I had never learned how to fight. But that night, in that quiet room, I finally understood something powerful. The voice in your mind isn't you. It's a habit. A pattern. A story you've repeated for so long that you mistake it for truth. And habits can be broken. Patterns can be rewired. Stories can be rewritten. That night wasn't victory. It wasn't transformation. It wasn't healing. It was something far more important, the moment I decided to fight back. A decision so small, and yet so powerful that it would lead me to the next chapter of my life. A chapter where I would finally discover the truth about the inner voice, and the hidden weakness it doesn't want you to know. The night I decided to fight back, nothing dramatic happened. There were no fireworks. No sudden clarity. No heroic surge of motivation. Just a quiet shift, a subtle, almost invisible line drawn inside my mind. A line that whispered, I am no longer obeying you. But when you decide to fight the inner voice, the voice doesn't disappear. It grows louder. Because it senses something it hasn't felt in years, resistance. And resistance is dangerous to the part of you that feeds on fear. The next morning, I woke up feeling unsettled. Not anxious. Not depressed. Just aware. Aware of the voice. Aware of its presence. Aware of how quickly it tried to slip back into control. Before I even got out of bed, it whispered, "You'll quit. You always quit." The words hit me harder than I expected. Because they weren't wrong. I had quit things before: dreams, habits, goals, versions of myself I didn't believe I deserved. But something inside me pushed back. Not loudly. Barely even a thought. But enough. Not this time. I got up. Made my bed. Brushed my teeth. Opened the curtains. Small actions, but each one felt like stepping onto a battlefield. Because when you challenge the voice, it doesn't attack your actions. It attacks your identity. And that morning, it tried everything. It questioned my worth. My potential. My effort. My past. My future. It twisted every mistake into a prophecy. Every flaw into a limitation. Every insecurity into a truth. But something felt different now. For the first time in my life, I wasn't listening passively. I was observing. Watching. Noticing. Studying. And what I saw shocked me. The voice wasn't powerful. It was predictable. It was repetitive. Circular. Almost mechanical. Like a recording set on loop, a collection of fears that didn't evolve, didn't change, didn't grow with me. It said the same things it had said years ago. The same doubts. The same insults. The same warnings of failure. And suddenly, the thought hit me, how can something that never grows control someone who is capable of infinite growth? It was the first crack in the illusion. The first sign of weakness. And once I saw that weakness, I couldn't unsee it. I spent the rest of the day noticing the voice. Not fighting it. Not arguing with it. Not trying to silence it. Just noticing. And the more I noticed, the more I realized something profound: the inner critic isn't powerful. It's persistent. It wins not because it's strong, but because it speaks first. Before you think. Before you try. Before you choose. The voice had been controlling my life simply because I never paused long enough to question it. And that's when the second revelation hit me: every inner battle is fought in milliseconds. Between impulse and choice. Between fear and action. Between the voice in your mind and the truth in your soul. And for years, I had been losing those milliseconds. But noticing the voice, watching it like an observer instead of obeying it like a prisoner, gave me something I had never had before: control. Even if it was small. Even if it was fragile. Even if it was uncomfortable. It was control. And control is the beginning of victory. That evening, as I sat alone in my room, I realized something unsettling: the voice wasn't random. It wasn't spontaneous. It wasn't chaotic. It had a pattern. It attacked me the most when I was about to do something important. When I wanted to start a new habit. When I wanted to take a risk. When I wanted to express myself. When I wanted to grow. When I wanted to believe in myself. That's when the voice got loud. Chaotic. Demanding. Overwhelming. Because the voice doesn't care about your comfort. It cares about your potential and stopping it. And that's when the truth hit me so hard it felt like the air was knocked from my lungs. The inner voice isn't trying to protect you. It's trying to prevent you from changing. Because change is dangerous. Growth is dangerous. Progress is dangerous. Not to you. To the voice. Because the moment you grow, the voice loses power. The moment you act, the voice loses credibility. The moment you choose courage, the voice becomes irrelevant. It clings to the old version of you, the insecure one, the scared one, the uncertain one, the wounded one. Because that's the only place where it can survive. And in that moment, a deeper question formed inside me: if the voice depends on the old me, who am I becoming without it? That question terrified me. But it also excited me. Because for the first time, I wasn't afraid of the voice. I was curious. And curiosity is the beginning of rebellion. That night, I made a decision, small, but defiant. A decision that would change everything. I would listen to the voice, but I would no longer obey it. And the very next morning, that decision was put to the test in a way I didn't expect. A moment where the voice would strike harder than ever, and where I would discover the first weapon in winning the battle inside my mind. A weapon the inner critic never wants you to learn. Because once you have it, the voice stops being the enemy and becomes the teacher. The next morning, the battle began before I even opened my eyes. It was early, too early, that gray-blue hour when the world is quiet but your thoughts are loud. And before I could take a single breath, the voice struck. You're already behind. You won't keep this up. Why are you even trying? You know you'll fail again. It was precise. Sharp. Perfectly timed. The moment I decided I would no longer obey it, it doubled its attack. For a few seconds, I froze. The voice felt stronger than yesterday, stronger because I was resisting, stronger because it sensed change coming, stronger because for the first time in years, it was threatened. But here's the thing about patterns: once you see them, you can't pretend you don't. I lay there, staring at the ceiling, heart beating faster than it should, thoughts swirling like a storm. And then, almost instinctively, I did something I had never done before. I spoke back. Not out loud. Not dramatically. Just a whisper in my mind: that's not me. The moment I said it, something shifted. Not in the voice, it kept talking, but in me. It felt like a separation. A tiny crack between who I was and the voice that had been speaking for me my entire life. I sat up slowly, my body shaky,
but my mind alert, like I had just stepped into a world I'd never seen clearly before.
And that's when it clicked. The inner critic survives by pretending to be your identity. But the moment you label it, the illusion breaks.
This was the first weapon. A weapon so simple, so small, that it almost didn't make sense. But it was more powerful than anything I had ever tried. Weapon, externalization, that's not me.
Separating your identity from your inner critic. The voice is strongest when you think it is you. When you think its criticism is your truth. When you think its fear is your wisdom. When you think its doubt is your intuition. But the moment you say, "That's not me," that's just the voice, everything changes. Because you create distance. You shift from being the voice to observing the voice. And observers have something prisoners don't: choice.
I didn't know this psychologically at the time, but I felt it instantly. The moment I labeled the voice, its words lost sharpness.
They didn't vanish. They didn't weaken. But they became foreign. Like hearing someone else's thoughts echoing inside your mind. And something inside me, something small, but real, ignited curiosity. If the voice wasn't me, who was I beneath it? That question became fuel.
I got out of bed with shaky legs and made my way to the kitchen.
The voice followed. "You're wasting your time. You'll fall back into old habits. You're pretending to be someone you're not."
But instead of collapsing under the weight of those words,
I watched them.
I listened to them the same way I'd listen to a stranger on the street yelling nonsense: sad,
predictable, irrational, detached from reality.
And while the voice raged, I did something bold, not big, not dramatic, but bold. I made myself a healthy breakfast.
Nothing special. Just food that made me feel good. Then I sat down and wrote in my notebook, "The voice is loud today." But loud is not the same as true.
Those words felt like a breakthrough. Like I had punched a hole in the wall of a prison I didn't know I'd built around myself.
And through that hole, light was finally coming in.
Later that day, I experienced something I wasn't prepared for.
A moment that both terrified me and set me free.
I was cleaning my desk, a simple, mundane task, when the voice attacked harder than ever.
Not with fear. Not with doubt. Not with criticism.
With something far more dangerous.
It said, "You're not allowed to change."
And those words hit me in a place I didn't even know existed.
Not allowed? Who decides that? Who decides what I am allowed to become? Who decides how much I am allowed to grow? Who decides what version of myself I can reach?
A laugh, small, quiet, disbelieving, escaped me.
Not because it was funny, but because,
for the first time in my life, the voice sounded ridiculous.
Not powerful. Not convincing. Not wise. Ridiculous. Because the truth slammed into me like a wave. The inner critic has no authority. Only volume. It cannot stop you. It cannot punish you. It cannot limit you. It cannot control you. It can only convince you.
The voice wasn't a commander.
It was a suggestion.
A suggestion I had obeyed for far too long.
And once I saw that truth, I couldn't go back.
Something inside me, something that had been sleeping, buried, forgotten, rose up and whispered, "I decide who I become."
Those 5 words felt like a weapon. A shield. A rebirth.
And from that moment on, I didn't just fight the voice.
I challenged it. Every time it spoke, I asked myself one simple question, a question that would become the foundation of the next stage of my transformation: is this my fear, or my voice?
And the more I asked, the clearer the battlefield became.
The clearer I became. But the inner critic wasn't done. Not yet. Because when you stop believing it, it evolves. It adapts. It changes strategy.
It attacks where you're weakest. And the next attack it launched, the attack waiting for me the very next morning, would force me to uncover weapon. The weapon that would shatter the inner critic completely. A weapon so powerful the voice would try to hide it from me until the last possible second.
And when I discovered it, nothing inside my mind would ever be the same again.
The next morning, the voice didn't whisper.
It waited. Silent. Patient. Strategic.
As if it knew the fight had changed, as if it knew its old tricks were losing their power. And predators become most dangerous when they're threatened.
I didn't hear anything while brushing my teeth. Nothing during my shower. Nothing while making breakfast. For a moment, I thought I had one. But that's when I realized something chilling. The inner critic doesn't strike when you're weak. It strikes when you're trying to rise. And sure enough, the moment I sat down to work, a small task, something simple, nothing dramatic, the voice struck with a force I wasn't ready for. Not with doubt. Not with fear. Not with insecurity. With something much darker. It said, "Why even bother? Nothing you do matters." I froze. Because all the earlier attacks, "You'll fail, you're not good enough, you'll quit, you're behind," those attacks were painful, but familiar. But this one was different. It didn't attack my ability. It attacked my meaning. It didn't question my skill. It questioned my existence. My chest tightened. My breath shortened. My hands trembled slightly without my permission. Because when the voice attacks your worth, it doesn't want to stop your effort. It wants to stop you. This was the voice at its most dangerous. Not loud. Not aggressive. But cold. Empty. A voice that wanted to collapse everything inside me, the progress, the clarity, the small victories, the hope, into a single point of despair. And that's when I learned another truth. The inner critic isn't trying to win the battle. It's trying to make you stop fighting. If it can't scare you, it tries to numb you. If it can't intimidate you, it tries to erase your belief in yourself altogether. This wasn't a mental attack. It was psychological warfare. And for a moment, I almost broke. But something inside me, something small but fierce, refused to collapse. A tiny voice inside whispered, "No. Not this time." And from that whisper, a realization surfaced. A realization that became my second weapon: the inner critic cannot survive clarity. It thrives only in vagueness. The voice had said, "Nothing you do matters." So I asked myself something I had never asked before: matters to who? The question cut through the fog. Because vague attacks seem powerful. Specific ones fall apart. I stood up from my desk and paced the room, repeating the question: matters to who? Matters in what way? According to which standard? And suddenly, its attack crumbled. Because the voice couldn't answer. It never could. Its power wasn't truth, its power was ambiguity. And that's when weapon revealed itself. Weapon, precision, forced the inner critic to be specific, and it collapses. Whenever the voice says, "You'll fail," ask, "Fail at what exactly?" "You're behind." Ask, "Behind who?" "You're not good enough." Ask, "Good enough for what?" "It won't work." Ask, "What won't work and why?" The voice can't answer. Because the voice has no logic. No facts. No evidence. Just fear wrapped in noise. The moment you demand precision, the illusion dissolves. That morning, I sat back at my desk, looked straight ahead, and said in my mind, "Be specific." And for the first time in my life, the voice was silent. Not because it had nothing to say, but because it had nothing real to say. And that silence felt like breathing after being underwater too long. For the rest of the day, I used weapon like armor. Whenever the voice spoke, I sliced through it with questions. You're wasting time. How exactly? Show me. You're not talented enough. According to what measure? People will judge you. Who, specifically? Every time I pressed it for detail, the voice weakened. It stumbled. It paused. It retreated. Because vagueness is its oxygen. Remove vagueness, and the voice suffocates. By the afternoon, something remarkable happened. The voice tried a new tactic. A tactic I never expected. A tactic more subtle, more manipulative, more dangerous than the rest. It didn't attack me. It pretended to protect me. It whispered, "You're not ready yet. Just wait a little longer. You don't want to fail. You don't want to look stupid. You don't want to make a mistake." And for a moment, its gentleness almost fooled me. Because this wasn't self-hate. It was self-sabotage disguised as safety. And that is the inner critic's deadliest form. Because if the voice can't defeat you with fear, it will try to lull you into stagnation. But this time, I was prepared. Because I realized something crucial: the inner critic is not a villain. It's a scared version of you trying to protect you with outdated information. It's your past self. Your wounded self. Your fearful self. And that led me to the most powerful realization of the day: the battle in your mind is not you versus the voice. It's you versus the old you. The smaller you. The limited you. The survival mode you. And once you understand that, the entire war changes. Because you stop fighting with anger. And start fighting with leadership. But the biggest weapon, the weapon that would finally silence the voice and shift the entire direction of my life, was still waiting for me. A weapon I didn't discover through thinking, but through a single, terrifying moment that came the very next evening. The moment when the inner critic made its boldest move and I made my greatest breakthrough. The evening started quietly. Too quietly. The kind of quiet that feels intentional, like the silence before a storm. I didn't notice it at first. I was cleaning my room, rearranging my desk, feeling a rare sense of progress, a lightness I hadn't felt in years. But deep down, something was shifting. Not around me. Inside me. The voice had been unusually restrained all day, not gone, but distant. Muted. Watching. And I didn't understand why until I made one small decision. A tiny action. A single step forward. I sat down at my desk, opened my laptop, and took a breath. Nothing dramatic. Nothing brave. Just one simple click toward a project I had been avoiding for years, a dream I'd buried under doubt, fear, and judgment. A dream the voice had always guarded fiercely. The moment I clicked the file, the voice returned. Not as fear. Not as doubt. Not as self-hate. As panic. Cold, sharp, explosive panic. It struck with deadly precision. Stop. You'll ruin everything. You're not ready. Close it. Now. My chest tightened instantly. My pulse jumped. A cold wave washed through my body like a threat. This wasn't normal self-doubt. This was terror, the inner critic's ultimate weapon. Because nothing terrifies the voice more than one thing: you taking action toward the life it cannot survive in. And in that moment, I understood the truth with painful clarity: the inner critic isn't afraid of failure. It's afraid of your potential. Because your potential destroys it. The voice wasn't trying to protect me. It was fighting for its life. And that's when the real battle began. My hands hovered above the keyboard, shaking slightly. My throat tightened. My breath shortened. My mind felt like it was being pulled back into an old version of myself, like gravity trying to drag me downward. The voice kept screaming, "Stop! Stop! Stop!" My entire body wanted to obey. Not because I agreed. Not because I believed the voice. But because panic is primal. Panic bypasses logic. Panic bypasses growth. Panic bypasses choice. And that's when I realized something I should have known all along: the inner critic is not in your mind. It's in your nervous system. It's not just thoughts. It's physical. It hijacks your breath, your muscles, your heartbeat, your instincts. And it knows exactly how to shut you down. That was the moment I almost closed the laptop. Almost backed away. Almost surrendered. But then, something unexpected happened. A thought surfaced, a simple, grounding thought: breathe. Not fight. Not argue. Not resist. Just breathe. So I inhaled, slowly, deeply, intentionally. And something extraordinary happened. The panic didn't disappear. But it weakened. Just slightly. Enough for me to recognize something crucial: the voice was loud, because I was stepping into something true. And from that realization, a new weapon emerged. Not a thought. Not a strategy. A practice. A physical, biological weapon. Weapon, regulation, the breath that breaks the voice, calming your nervous system so the inner critic loses its power. The inner critic feeds on dysregulation. When your body panics, your brain believes the lies. When your breath is shallow, fear feels like truth. When your chest is tight, doubt feels like certainty. But when you breathe deeply, slowly, intentionally, something profound happens: your rational mind comes back online. Your courage returns. Your clarity sharpens. Your identity reactivates. Because breathing is not just oxygen. Breathing is control. It is the single fastest way to shut down the inner critic's strongest weapon: panic. I closed my eyes and breathed again. Inhale, 4 seconds. Hold 1 second. Exhale, 6 seconds. A pattern. A rhythm. A message sent directly to my nervous system: you are safe. With each breath, the fog lifted. With each breath, the grip of the voice weakened. With each breath, I returned to myself. And when I opened my eyes, the voice was still there. But softer. Smaller. Less certain. Because panic fuels the voice. Calm exposes it. I looked at the project on my screen, really looked at it. And for the first time, I didn't feel fear. I felt sadness. Sadness for the years I had lost. Sadness for the dreams I abandoned. Sadness for the version of me who believed the voice was truth. But that sadness didn't break me. It strengthened me. Because sadness is not weakness. Sadness is awareness. Sadness is awakening. Then something remarkable happened. I made the tiniest move forward. A single sentence typed. Just one. Nothing huge. Nothing impressive. But that one sentence felt like a declaration: you don't control me anymore. My hands were still shaky. My heart still uneasy. But I had done something the voice never expected: I acted. And action, even the smallest action, is kryptonite to the inner critic. Because the voice lives only in hesitation. You step forward, and it loses power. As I sat there, breath steady, mind clear, fingers poised above the keyboard, I realized something profound: winning the battle isn't about eliminating the voice. It's about overpowering its influence. Not once. Not twice. Every time. Weapon separated me from the voice. Weapon exposed the voice's weakness. Weapon broke the voice's physical hold on me. But the battle wasn't over. Because the inner critic has one last form, its final, most deceptive version. A version that doesn't sound like fear, or panic, or doubt. A version that sounds like logic. A version that sounds like truth. A version that whispers, be realistic. And facing that form would lead me to the final weapon, the weapon that would end the war inside my mind once and for all. I thought the battle was almost over. I had separated myself from the voice. I had exposed its vagueness. I had quieted its panic with breath. For the first time in years, I felt in control. Not perfectly, but meaningfully. But the inner critic doesn't surrender easily. When fear fails, when doubt fails, when panic fails, the voice takes its final form. Its smartest form. Its deadliest form. It becomes reasonable. It happened 3 days after my breakthrough. I felt good, genuinely good, for the first time in a long time. Momentum was building. I was working a little each day. Breathing deeper. Thinking clearer. And right when life began to feel possible again, the voice returned. Not harsh. Not loud. Quiet. Calm. Polished. It whispered, be realistic. Not don't try. Not you'll fail. Not you're not enough. Just, be realistic. And I didn't recognize it at first. Because it didn't sound like doubt. It sounded like wisdom. It sounded like maturity. It sounded like responsibility. And that's why this attack is the most dangerous of all, when the voice disguises itself as your rational mind. It doesn't aim to scare you. It aims to convince you. Convince you to stay small. Convince you to stay safe. Convince you to stay predictable. Not out of fear, but out of logic. And at first, I fell for it. I sat at my desk, looking at the project I'd been building, slowly, quietly, courageously. And the reasonable voice whispered, you don't have enough experience yet. You should wait until you're more prepared. You don't want to look foolish. You should start with something smaller. You're aiming too high. You're not one of those people who succeed at this level. Be realistic. Every sentence felt almost true. Almost rational. Almost safe. And that was the danger. It wasn't fear holding me back this time. It was logic that wasn't mine. Logic born from the past. Logic born from insecurity. Logic born from a life I was trying to outgrow. And as I sat there, staring at the screen, feeling myself shrink inch by inch, I nearly closed the laptop. Not because I was scared, but because I thought the voice was right. The voice had evolved. It wasn't trying to defeat me. It was trying to guide me into a smaller life. A life where I didn't fail, but also didn't rise. A life where I didn't embarrass myself, but also didn't expand. A life where I didn't risk anything, but also didn't become anything. And then, as I hovered over the screen, ready to back away, I remembered something. A sentence I'd written on a page weeks earlier. A truth I didn't realize would become my lifeline. It said, the voice is not truth. It is familiar. And familiarity is comfortable, but it is not destiny. With that thought, something clicked. And the final weapon revealed itself. A weapon more powerful than separation. More powerful than precision. More powerful than breath. A weapon the inner critic cannot survive. Weapon, identity acting from your future self instead of your fearful one, stepping into the version of you the voice cannot manipulate. The inner critic is the voice of who you used to be, the insecure you, the wounded you, the limited you, the younger you. But your future self, the strongest, clearest, most grounded version of you, doesn't hear the voice the same way. Your future self doesn't shrink. Doesn't doubt. Doesn't surrender. Your future self leads. And in that moment, sitting at my desk with the reasonable voice whispering in my ear. I asked myself a question that shattered everything. What would the version of me I'm trying to become do right now?
Not the scared me.
Not the doubting me. Not the tired me. Not the overwhelmed me. The future me. The aligned me. The elevated me.
The version of me who had already won this battle. I closed my eyes and imagined that self, calm,
grounded, focused, unshaken by fear, unmoved by doubt, unbothered by judgment. And I asked again, what would they do? The answer wasn't dramatic. It wasn't heroic. It was simple, they would take the next step. Not perfectly. Not fearlessly. Not confidently. Just intentionally. So I did. I opened the file again. Typed another line. Then another. Then another.
Not from the small version of me. Not from the scared version of me. From the becoming version of me.
And the voice, the reasonable voice, began to fade. Not because I fought it. Because I no longer identified with it.
Identity is the kryptonite of the inner critic.
Because once you step into who you want to be, the voice loses access. It isn't your voice anymore. It's just noise. That night, something remarkable happened.
I looked at the progress I'd made, tiny, simple, imperfect progress, and I felt something I hadn't felt in years, quiet pride.
Not loud. Not boastful. Not euphoric. Just a steady warmth inside my chest that whispered, "You're becoming someone new." And in that moment, I realized the truth of the entire battle. The inner critic doesn't disappear when you grow. It disappears when you outgrow it. When you become someone whose identity no longer matches the voice that once controlled you. And there was still one final realization, one final twist waiting for me.
A truth that would change the way I saw my inner voice forever. A truth that would reveal what the inner battle was really about, and why winning it was never about destroying the voice in the first place. In the days after choosing to act from my future self, something unexpected began to happen. The voice didn't vanish. It didn't apologize. It didn't admit defeat. It changed. Not in strength. Not in aggression. In tone. It became softer. Less combative. Less frantic. Still present, but different. At first, I didn't understand why. I assumed maybe it was waiting for the right moment to strike. Maybe it was planning another disguise. Maybe it was preparing a final ambush. But then, one evening, as I walked home under the fading orange sky, a thought hit me with such force I had to stop walking. It wasn't a realization. It was a revelation. A truth so obvious that I had missed it for years. A truth that turned the entire battle upside down. A truth that made everything make sense. Here it is, the inner voice is not the enemy. It is the unhealed version of you trying to keep you safe the only way it knows how. Not safe from danger. Safe from pain. Safe from shame. Safe from embarrassment. Safe from rejection. Safe from disappointment. Safe from the risks that come with growth. The voice wasn't trying to destroy me. It was trying to protect me from the world that once hurt me. But it used outdated rules. Childhood rules. Survival rules. Rules that no longer applied to the life I was trying to build. And suddenly, everything shifted. Because if the voice wasn't the villain, it was something much more tragic, a scared child trapped inside an adult body. A past self frozen in fear. A younger me repeating warnings from a story I had already outgrown. This was the twist. The truth I needed to see. The truth the voice never wanted me to understand. The truth that changed the war inside my mind forever.
The inner critic is not trying to hold you back. It's trying to prevent you from feeling pain again. And once I understood that, something miraculous happened. The battle ended. Not with victory. Not with a dramatic triumph. With compassion.
That night, I sat on the edge of my bed, the room dim, the world quiet, the air still. And for the first time in my life, I didn't fight the voice.
I spoke to it. Not angrily. Not with resistance. Not with defiance. With kindness. I whispered inside my mind, "You're trying to protect me. But I'm not that person anymore. You don't have to be scared. I can lead now." The moment I said those words, something inside me cracked open. Not broken, opened. A release. A soft collapse. Like my mind exhaled for the first time in decades. And the voice, the one that had haunted me for years, fell quiet. Not silenced. Not defeated. Calmed. Because it finally heard something it had never heard before, reassurance. Not avoidance. Not suppression. Not anger. Understanding. And in that moment, I felt something beautifully strange, peace. Not because the voice was gone, but because I finally understood its role. Its purpose. Its fear. Its origin. The inner critic wasn't my jailer. It was my frightened guardian. Trying to keep me small because small meant safe. Trying to keep me hidden because hidden meant unharmed. Trying to keep me careful because careful meant never failing again. But I wasn't that fragile anymore. I wasn't that version of myself. I had outgrown the cage. And the voice was simply late to realizing it. The next morning, something miraculous happened. The voice did speak. Of course it did. It said, "You shouldn't try too much today," but before it could finish, I placed a hand on my chest and breathed slowly. Then I answered, "Thank you for trying to protect me. But I'm okay now." The voice didn't argue. Didn't panic. Didn't shout. It softened. Just like that. Because the inner critic cannot fight back when it is treated with compassion instead of fear. Compassion disarms it. Reassurance relaxes it. Leadership guides it. And in the days that followed, every time the voice appeared, I answered gently. "I hear you, but I'm choosing differently. I know you're scared, but I'm not staying small. I understand why you feel this way, but I'm safe. I know you're trying to protect me, but I'm growing now." And slowly, beautifully, the voice transformed. Not into silence, but into something new, a reminder of who I used to be and how far I've come. No longer a weapon. No longer an enemy. No longer a threat. Just a wounded echo of the past that finally felt seen, finally felt heard, finally felt allowed to rest. And that was the true victory. Not defeating the voice. Healing it. Not silencing the inner critic. Integrating it. Not winning the war. Ending it, because I finally understood it was never me versus the voice. It was me versus the version of me that didn't know I could be more. And now I lead. Now I choose. Now I speak louder than the voice. And the hidden battle in my mind is no longer a battle. It's a dialogue. A reconciliation. A transformation. Because the moment you learn to lead your inner voice instead of obeying it, you win. Every day. Every step. Every thought. Every version of yourself you grow into. You win.